Thank you so much to everyone who stepped up, stepped in to lead tonight, and our prayers for healing go to our beloved Cantor at home who's really suffering tonight, and we love him and we pray for his complete healing. And so much gratitude to Joyce Rosenzweig, to Nora Isikoff, to Rabbi Marisa James, to Judy Ribnick, and for the entire pop-up chorus for bringing such beautiful music, and to all of you for singing and praying with such energy. I'm not used to this. This is, it's funny how reminiscent and nostalgic it feels on some level to communicate this way. But it's kind of lonely because when I did it for all those months of COVID, of course, Joyce and Sam, or David before Sam, were on the Zoom with me, and I'm here alone doing it, trying to reach all of you who are together. And it's a powerful image for me to carry at this moment. And so some words of Torah for this service. I've been thinking a lot this year, of course, about leaving, about endings, about transitions, about in-betweennesses. And every leaving, every end, every death, every loss carries echoes of earlier ones, some which were very long ago, and many which were very recent. And I know that's true for all of you too. We're going through something that requires us to look deeply at pain. I know there's some of you who are looking forward to the future and hoping the next rabbi will be better than me or different than me, or will bring things that you've been looking forward to that you didn't get with me. And I pray that that's true also. I am one human being that has tried as hard as I can to be the best rabbi possible for this community for these many, many decades and years. And I also am deeply aware of the ways that I have fallen short, have failed, have made mistakes, and have caused pain and harm. Edward White, who is a Protestant theologian and sociologist, wrote in his book about pastors leaving their congregations, how to say goodbye is the ultimate question for a pastor. How to learn from the journey we have shared together. How do we deal with the range of feelings that exist at this moment? How do we genuinely make room for grief and not just push it aside with the busyness planning for the next stage? And how do we avoid doing each other harm in the process? How, in fact, can saying goodbye be an occasion for spiritual growth? In fact, one of my personal activities this year, you might say, or my personal study processes has been to read 15 or 20 books that are written about this process of a pastor or a rabbi or a minister leaving a long-term position and moving on in life, and how a congregation responds, and how a congregation goes through a process of losing a pastor, a minister, a rabbi, a priest. And I feel like I've had a little bit of a graduate seminar this year, personally, privately, on this question. I've read all of these books, spoken to many, 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 many people, and have studied this deep process. And I'm left with so many questions, and there are no simple answers in this as in anything else. For me, it has been particularly difficult to ask the question of how to live in the middle of the world being on fire. Of course, I had a very different image of what this year would look like. And I had imagined, like so many, that when Simchat Torah ended and the high holiday season ended, we would move into a process of thoughtful disengagement, thoughtful goodbyes, thoughtful processes to create a pathway for me to be able to engage with all of you around this ending time. And I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, that was far from what this year has been like. And in some ways, it's true about what all these years have been like at CBST. I came to CBST in the middle of a profound crisis when our community was under attack by a virus, unsupported and neglected by the government, hated by the society at large. And guess what? In so many ways, we're back where we were when I started. In some ways, it's very familiar. The anti-LGBT legislation that is proliferating everywhere, the hatred toward women, the hatred towards Jews, the sense of vulnerability and uncertainty and anxiety. It is so similar to when I arrived at CBST in August of 1992. We as a community were very alone in those days. And so many of us remember very painfully what that was like. For me now, I spend a lot of time this year thinking about these questions, grateful in many ways for arriving to CBST in the midst of AIDS, because it taught me so much of how to lead this community through this plague. Many of my colleagues have chosen to retire either because of COVID, because of the changes of administration and the terrific problems and pain that have been caused in these past years. But for me, neither of those are reasons to leave. And in fact, I'm grateful to have served CBST through so many different crises. But of course, the question to ask, have I been a good enough leader this year? This is a question I have asked myself every year. What would I have done differently to lead? I'm reviewing all my years with these same questions. With the interns and with the assistant and associate rabbis and cantors over the years, every year we perform a cheshbon hashana, an accounting of the year. And I've tried to teach the interns that this is an essential part of the work of being a rabbi, to list person by person who we've been in contact with, to appreciate every single Shiva minyan, every single wedding, every single funeral, every single conversation, because they fly by and we move on very quickly to the next one. But it is an incredible privilege as a rabbi to serve with people at moments of great crisis and at moments of great joy. But of course, in a large congregation, there are also disappointments to deal with. How to resolve those and to be responsive to people who are sure they know best what a rabbi should do. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. What I have to learn from these times is the question I ask myself all the time, and I ask you to ask yourselves personally. Not only what does CBST have to learn, and while I have done so much with all of you these many, many years at CBST to create a new institution, and in many ways, the 19 years that CBST existed before me as a lay-led community was such a different time that my leaving now is in some ways very similar to a founder leaving a community. And I want to reassure you that you have the wisdom, should you use it well, to magnificently maneuver through these next years. That's the question. How well will you use it? How humble and full of humility will you be as you face the challenges of this transition to Rabbi Klein? How much will you ask for help from those who know more? How much will you be sensitive and thoughtful and full of a sense of not knowing? In the world of doubt is the place that deep, deep learning comes. The question of what we all have to learn isn't institutional, it is personal. And I urge each of us to ask the question, what do you have to learn about yourself in this particular moment? What is it that God placed you here to learn? Not grand issues about how CBST's board should get reorganized or the staff should get redeveloped or the strategic plan needs to happen immediately. but spiritually, what is it that you have to learn right now? What is it spiritually that I have to learn right now? I trust all of the other things will happen in a healthy and bumpy way if we start with asking ourselves what we have to learn. Where is our spiritual growth in this moment? And not quickly go to solving problems or solving systems or creating new things. CBST is a different place than when I arrived. No longer will it be your job just to support an individual new rabbi who is joining. Your job is to support an entire clergy team. This is not about one person entering the system. It's about making sure the system remains healthy and vibrant and alive for everyone who is in it. We are doing this big transition at a moment that the world is on fire when no one can talk to each other. Just think about what the word Zionism means, such radically different things to different people. I'm in some settings where people are using the word Zionist, and when I ask them what it means, for them, it's as close to the word Nazi as is possible. For others, Zionism is a dream, a hope, a possibility that in many ways has been shattered by some knowledge and events. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Are we able to understand this means very different things to very different people? And we are so rigidly in our trenches about what these words and ideas mean that it becomes almost impossible to be curious, to try and understand, to ask questions. Each side has become so maximalist in its description of the worst of the other side. And this week alone, such horrible things have happened. The Brooklyn Museum, the leadership of the museum homes have been targeted with 2 upside down red triangles, which I learned that upside down red triangles is Hamas's image for their next targets. On the subway, we hear of somebody shouting, "Anyone who is a Zionist, raise your hand, get off the subway." A demonstration in front of the music festival exhibit about October 7th has people chanting horrific, hateful things. Deans at Columbia University, their texts being caught making fun of Jewish students. I'm called in 1 week a genocide rabbi for supporting the rights of Palestinians and crying at the suffering of Palestinians, and being called at the same time an anti-Zionist, because while I cry at the suffering of Palestinians, I cry at the suffering of Jews. And so one side calls me a genocide for caring about the future of the Jewish people, and the other side calls me anti-Zionist for caring about the future and the full lives of Palestinian people. Social media has made this so toxic. We live in this world and we're losing my relationship with you, my ability to speak with you directly in a moment that we have to find other sources. And a moment we have to find ways of responding. You have listened to me for years talk about hard things. You have heard me say it will get worse, not as a way to terrify you, but to say we have to strengthen muscles to be able to respond to the horrific authoritarianism, anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, which is like a tsunami covering our world. The answers remain very simple because there are no simplistic answers, but there are some simple ones. No one can do everything. Everyone can do something. The best way to respond to hatred and violence in the world is to focus on the parts of the world we can affect. Focus on kindness. As Rabbi Moskowitz says, there's no such thing as a small act of kindness. Every act of kindness changes the world. It changes the DNA. It changes the cosmic ordering of the world, every act of kindness. Be more kind, be more creative, be more generative, care more about art and beauty and nature and math. Don't let yourself be so numbed out that you can't care about the things that bring you happiness. Joy is an act of spiritual and political resistance. Do not despair. I say these now to offer them to you as a gift for the future. Repeat them over and over to yourselves. And remember, in face of anti-Semitism, yes, we should protest, but ultimately, what will help the Jewish people survive for eternity is for us to be more Jewish and joyously so. I want to offer something that brought me so much joy as a small example from one of our young people, Adam Hannon. And I hope, Adam, you and your family are listening tonight, because what you did has already had ripple effects and impacted all of us who know this story. This is from Adam's parents, Lori and Jen, who wrote to me recently. Lest you not know the impact that CBST and you have had on our kids. Adam had a bit of an incident in school a few weeks ago when he said to a group of kids that he was Jewish. The school handled it immediately and well, and we believe he feels safe. Despite this, his school band concert was yesterday, and they traditionally have kids say a few welcome sentences in a few languages. Adam asked if he could do Hebrew, which is not traditionally one of the languages they do. And he did it beautifully. So Adam takes the Be More Jewish to heart. Thank you all for what you teach him. We are so grateful to you all, more than you could know. Be more Jewish and tell each other these beautiful, beautiful stories of success and of accomplishment and of resilience and of overcoming an obstacle. Hear each other's stories with joy. Reinforce them. Thank you, Adam. This story has given me so much resilience this very, very hard week. This week's Parsha offers a blessing I want to offer all of you. When words fail, I turn to our text, as all of you know, and in this week's Parsha is one of the most powerful ones. But first, a little archaeological lesson. You've heard this from me so many times, you're sick of it, I know. Jason, would you share that photo? The Birkat Kohanim was found on a tiny amulet that is now in the Israel Museum, and it dates from the time of the first temple, which is probably around the year-ish in the 900s BCE. So that makes that solidly what? Oh, I'm so bad at math. 3,000 years ago? And this amulet was found in an archaeological dig by the Scottish Hostel and Church, which is in the entrance to the German colony in Jerusalem, across from the gas station. And one of my last trips to Israel, I went to see the dig where this was found. I had never actually ever seen the location. And you can see the location where this piece of silver, which is why it lasted all these years, was found. And on it was found, with ancient Hebrew letters, enough of the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, for us to see that it's largely the same, or we can recognize it. Think of this. We can recognize something written in a language we can understand that's 3,000 years old. That brings me a lot of joy. There's a lot of history, a lot of time that our people have gone through a lot. We are not the first to live through difficult times. We stand on their shoulders. And this you can see on the far left is the original, and then you can see the whiter version is where they have removed, and you could see the ancient Hebrew blessing letters, and then on the far right, the Hebrew itself. So you can take that down, Jason. And I'd like to ask everyone to rise in body or spirit. The ancient words of our people found in this place, in this archaeological dig in Jerusalem, next to the Begin Center, by the way. These words, the most ancient words we have, are words of blessing and of peace. And since Judaism predates Islam and predates Christianity, this is the oldest prayer in the three monotheistic religions. This prayer is focused on blessings and on peace. So I leave you with this blessing on this, as we are arriving at the end of my time at CBST as senior rabbi. I can't give you any greater gift than the blessing of this week's Parsha. Yivarechacha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Eternal One forever bless you and forever protect you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yachuneka. May the Holy One's face give light to you and show you favor. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Eternal's face always be lifted toward you and bestow upon you fullness, completeness, contentment, and peace. And let us all say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom.